Before HBO, I was writing and producing at BBC. There I met Hamilton, beloved BBC colleague, and the son of the famed lawyer Fred Fisher, whose name brought the end of the communist Red Scare in the 1954 hearings. Hamilton joined me for a cross interview where we discuss our time at BBC and beyond, the Red Scare hearings of the 50s, the politics of the 60s, and today's presidential race.
Tammy!
Hey!
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine, Carla.
I would love to hear about how you got into media. I mean, your father was a lawyer, and so did you ever think that that is the path you were going to take as well?
No, but I wish I had now, looking back. Dad was a liberal Republican. There used to be liberal Republicans. There wasn't a lot of national organizations for lawyers back then. So he joined the Lawyers Guild of America. That's the name of it. And this was just lawyers who wanted to help the poor.
We have a young attorney named Fred Fisher, who was a member of a communist front group while he was at Harvard Law School.
Was he involved at all with communists, maybe knowingly or unknowingly?
Well, back then, yeah, unknowingly. Back then, if you were gay, you were considered a communist. They had these famous televised hearings back then.
Are you or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
I don't recognize the right of this committee to ask me these kind of questions.
And so that got him in trouble. That was a blemish on his career because he went to a stupid meeting. He was a World War II vet, served in the Philippines, Republican for God's sakes. But that was enough back then to get you in trouble. So many people's careers were ruined. You hear about the Hollywood blacklisting, and it was a terrible time to be alive.
In 1947, the committee investigated Hollywood, factory of America's imagination.
Any communistic information in any script?
Well, I have turned down quite a few scripts because I thought they were tinged with communistic ideas.
Are you a member of the Communist Party? Or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
It's unfortunate and tragic that I have to teach this committee the basic principles of Americanism.
That's not the question. The question is, have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
I'm framing my answer in the only way in which any American citizen can frame his
Then you
answer
denied.
to a question
Then
which
you
invades his, absolutely invades
Then
his
you
right.
denied. You refused to answer that question. Is that correct?
I have told you that I will offer my beliefs, my affiliations, and everything else to the American public, and they will know where I stand, as they do from what I have written.
Stand away from the stand.
I have written for Americanism for many years, and I shall
stand away from the stand.
Fight for the Bill of Rights, which you are trying to
take
destroy.
this man away from the stand.
Joe McCarthy, who was leading this campaign, the Red Scare, the whole country was in turmoil with this hysteria. And he said on national television, "You've got a communist in your law firm. In fact, he's part of your legal team here working with you today, Fred Fisher."
He has in his law firm a young man named Fisher, who has been for a number of years a member of an organization which was named, years and years ago, as the legal bulwark of the Communist Party. And I have hesitated bringing that up, but I have been rather bored with your phony request to Mr. Cohen here.
And there's this famous line, have you no sense of decency, sir? At long last.
At long last, have you left no sense of decency? Little did I dream you could be so reckless and so cruel as to do an injury to that lad. It is true he is still with Hale and Dorr. It is, I regret to say, equally true that I fear he shall always bear a scar needlessly inflicted by you. Let us not assassinate this lad further, Senator. You've done enough.
But of course, now he's smeared. And it did affect my dad professionally and in many other ways. But that was it. That was the end of the Red Scare. And Dad was the last one. And I like to think that was because his character was such that he could not be assailed for anything that he had done in his life. And it proved that this Joe McCarthy was just full of bluster and baloney. And after the hearings, the McCarthy hearings, he was censured, but Dad helped bring that down. He did a lot of good things in his life as a lawyer. He always volunteered his time. And his partner, James St. Clair, became Nixon's lawyer during Watergate. And so Dad would bring these wonderful lawyers home. And people give lawyers a hard time, but these were wonderful, wonderful men and women. And so I've always had a tremendous respect for lawyers and the law. And he was a bankruptcy lawyer, Dad. He started the bankruptcy department at this law firm, Hale and Dorr in Boston. And when he died, it was the largest department there. And he traveled the world giving lectures on bankruptcy law. And he believed, and it's true, that it saves corporations, it saves jobs, because you reorganize the company rather than having the company go out of business. He saved Walden Pond from being developed. And if you're a fan of that wonderful book, Henry David Thoreau, imagine if they had destroyed that pond. Because people from all over the world go to Walden Pond in Massachusetts to visit it because of that wonderful, wonderful book. And at Walden Pond, you can walk around Walden Pond today, and you can visit Henry David Thoreau's the foundation of his cabin that he had there, and you can see what's left of the fireplace, and it's written underneath a line from Walden, "Go up, thou my incense," and that's just a great part of American history, American literature, and I'm proud to say that Dad was a driving force behind saving that from being developed and lost. No, when I got, I went to college, English major, read poems and short stories for 4 years. I went and I studied journalism at Boston University. While I was there, I got an internship at a local TV station. And from there, I learned how to do sound. I learned how to shoot, learned how to write magazine stories. And from there, I went to Miami, and I was shooting full time, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. From there, I got, I followed my boss to Turner Productions up in Atlanta, and then I moved to New York, and all my dreams came true. And that's when I met you, and I remember introducing myself to you, and you said your name was Carla Mandrake. And I said, "Oh, Mandrake, like the magician?" Well, that was my grandfather. Oh God. You see, that's New York. You meet people who are, have famous families who are doing wonderful things, and I'm very impressed with your work.
Yeah.
You should have been doing original programming over at BBC. This stuff is beautiful, and your narration and your pacing and your editing and your shooting and the sentiment. Listening to that crosstalk you had with the man in Macau was wonderful about magic and the magician's perspective, and the fact that you built by hand the first copies of your original books. That's lovely. That's so romantic, Carla. It really is. It's beautiful, and I'm not surprised that someone with your genes, coming from someone like Mandrake the magician, that's a gift that you carry. And it's obvious in your work. And congratulations.
Wow. I don't know what to say. Thank you so much.
Well, we loved Mandrake. My Gloria, of course, everybody knows who Mandrake the magician is. And she told me that in Puerto Rico, they had a saying when they were kids growing up, and someone would challenge someone else to, to jump over a ditch or or do something crazy that was dangerous, and they'd look at each other and say, "Who do you think you are, Mandrake?" You would have to be Mandrake to do that. So that was a common saying in Puerto Rico. Of course, he was all over the world, as you know. Watched him on television.
This is my door to the underworld.
Mandrake, the magician.
That's a kick. But it's interesting to know that even in Latin America, you know, in a different language, Mandrake was big. He was international. He was, you know, universal in that way. So he was a very gifted and talented person. And not just his magic, but his personality, his presentation. That was the most endearing, the most charming thing about Mandrake, the magician. It's not the tricks, it's the presentation that goes with it, the person doing it. But we all need magic in our lives. And meeting you has just been lovely. And I'm so privileged. You know, I've been watching your other interviews with other people, the painter and the writer. Well, I've been watching your documentaries, your the body moving, the snapshot in time, the unity and love, all that wonderful scenes. You have a lovely voice. Your narration, it's just so endearing, and your editing is the pacing is flawless. It really just jumped out of the screen. And I've always loved your books. Gloria and I, you know, found them and purchased them, and you're very talented, and we love you very much.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry. Wow, thank you. Really, thank you. And thank you to Gloria.
You're one of those. You're one of those giants that I've met here and you only have encounters like this, in my experience, in New York. I remember bragging to some guy, "Oh, you know, I spent a day with Andy Warhol," and he said, "Oh, really? I knew Andy." Or I talked to this other guy, you know, the Olympics are coming. "Oh, my son's on the Olympic fencing team." It just goes on and on and on. How the hell did you get to the BBC?
First of all, how the hell? I was doing photography before, and I was shooting performers and you know, burlesque artists and musicians. And anyway, so I was doing photography, but it seemed the natural progression to go into more of the moving picture because, you know, a lot of my friends were performers, they were musicians. And so they not only wanted photography, but they also wanted maybe like music videos and things like that. So I just wanted to expand. So I went back to school. I went back to school for film and media studies, and I minored in music, and I went to Hunter College, which is on the Upper East Side. And while I was there studying media, I started, you know, just looking around at different jobs and working on set at different places and boutique studios. BBC was looking for a production assistant. So I went in for the interview. I didn't hear back for a little while. I didn't think, you know, anything of it. But then I hear back and I came in, and that was that. And I went very quickly because BBC is so small, was so small at that time when we first started, that I went very quickly from production assistant to producing with the editors there, as you know. And I learned from watching people like you who are, you know, seasoned producer, writer.
By tomorrow, this will all seem like a bad dream.
What if there were no tomorrow?
Here's to stolen moments.
The way that you story tell.
I've got a witch mad at me, and you might get into trouble.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too.
Only bad witches are ugly.
What do you think you're doing?
I keep forgetting I'm not in Kansas. Aren't you forgetting the ruby slippers?
The slippers.
Put 'em up. Put 'em up. How long can it stay fresh in that can?
You're able to put together these beautiful little works of art.
Thank you.
I was just extremely grateful. And that's it. I stayed there for 3 years.
Wow.
You.
And I like to think that, you know, for any aspiring filmmakers, if you want to make a movie someday, well, you know, make a promo. Show you can make a promo. You have to know how to write. You have to understand music and editing. And it's a great exercise. in all of those skills and disciplines.
When you were at BBC, you did a news segment.
Yeah, I was the manager of news promotion, and that was great working for the BBC News. Man, I was on the phone every day, calling to BBC in London. You know, they're all talking about the rundown for the day with the people in DC because that's where the show was broadcast, and it was very exciting. You know, I was on the team. I was in the huddle, and very proud of that. And I thought I knew it all, you know, when I came up here, but I quickly learned that it's not enough to know. It's not enough to be good. Is you got to be fast. And that was the hardest thing.
The BBC is on the ground with the very latest on the strongest earthquake ever to hit that Pacific nation.
You know, I've worked for some other big brands like CNBC and Al Jazeera and Madison Square Garden, which was wonderful. I worked for another genius there, whom you met. The pace was such a change for me. And I just knew I couldn't keep up with you crazy New Yorkers. But here I am now. Still in the game, Carla. Still in the game.
You are amazing, a powerhouse.
Don't get me started on Ted Turner, but he was a genius in so many ways. We had unlimited budgets, Carla. The greatest 6 years of my career. He didn't care how much we spent on making our shows. All he cared about was excellence. And people will say, oh, how do you run a company like that? Well, he built an international media empire. And when he was finally pushed out, the company just turned into any other company. When he was in charge, every month he'd come up with his credit card. They'd find him asleep outside of CNN, you know, with a hangover. He'd walk around with his credit card. I feel like having a party. And all of a sudden, all these tables would show up. It would be catered. And whenever we were premiering some movie, Ted Turner would bring in these people in costumes.
So after BBC, I went to HBO. After HBO, I started working on documentaries. You know, I did this, I don't know if you ever saw this documentary. I think you said you did. The brainwashing of my dad was about the media. And it was about specifically how the media brainwashes people, you know, which is funny because, you know, I'm in media, you're in media. And so it's like, we're kind of part of this whole thing, but it was more about the news.
Hollywood actor Matthew Modine reached out to Jen and said he wanted to produce the film.
It's the story about a media phenomenon that changed a father and divided a nation.
And just how it uses emotion, it uses fear, it uses anger, and all of these different tactics to lure in the viewer and have them go against their own interests, really, yes. Just by using sheer emotion.
We weren't really a political family. My dad was a non-political Kennedy Democrat. But then, when he started listening to talk radio, I saw him change. A lot.
And you know, you watch cable television, and you've got your Fox and your MSNBC, and it's all one side or the other, and one side is biased and the other side is biased 180 degrees.
Fear definitely drives people to conform to whatever the idea is.
Yes.
And I think that is really at the core of what we need to maybe like tackle, to find a way to have emotions but not sink into them so much, you know, kind of more about like observing them. And
I think that's very, very reasonable.
Here, two worlds actually met, but this coalition was to be torn asunder.
Let's see what can happen elsewhere in, say, the small town of Mosinee, Wisconsin. Peaceful, isn't it? But the red truncheon falls and the chief of police is hustled off to jail. Next, public utilities are seized by fifth colonists. Watch carefully what happens to an editor who operates under a free press. He goes to jail, too, and his newspaper is confiscated. Exit freedom of thought. Yes, this is life under the Soviet form of government. It can't happen here? Well, this is what it looks like if it should.
Nobody really understood what damage it had done to people.
Are you or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
We received all kinds of threatening letters. We're going to burn down your house. My mother told me, be careful going to school. We had, it was a lot of harassment. And I said, Mom, but Dad was never a communist. And she said, well, there's always 30% of the country that will never agree with the truth. They're just emotional. They're reactionaries.
I hear what you're saying about the reactionary thing. And I think that really is at the core of everything. It's about the emotions, like getting people riled up with fear. And it really is such a huge problem in our world. And I mean, we even saw the same thing happen during the pandemic, you could say, because everything was about fear. And it wasn't really about trying to empower us to, make sure that we're as healthy as possible and doing really healthy activities.
For me, as a public health person, I just say get your third shot. Forget about what the definition is. I just want to see people be optimally protected.
It was kind of this misguided thing.
But we all thought we were going to die, which became weaponized for lockdowns. It became weaponized as a rationale for massive infusion of fiat currency into the economy, for causing people to no longer be able to go to work, et cetera, et cetera.
It became apparent after a while that the lockdowns are counterproductive.
And in many ways, COVID restrictions were worse than COVID itself.
It brought out the worst in us, didn't it?
Right. And I feel like it shouldn't have. It should have brought out the best in us, because we should have been able to come together with love.
Through the World Council for Health, we seek to bring together both science and wisdom and common sense and empower people to take responsibility for their health and to step away from this very fear-based approach to health and recognize that they have choices. Currently, we have more than 150 partner organizations around the world, including Children's Health Defense, and across 50 countries, and we're growing every day. We've recently held the Better Way Conference, which has really consolidated what a better world looks like.
You said that your father was a liberal Republican. Is that
yes.
Right? Yeah, because as far as I understand, for example, the Black population was predominantly Republican back then. And then when JFK was running, I think they started to just make the switch over to Democrat. And is it related to your father being a liberal Republican? Yes, it's very, very interesting to me, because also, like, today, I feel like the Democrats are a little bit more conservative. I just see it like that. It's like, I'm like, wait a second. So then it makes me think back to that time, the 60s. I don't know if I'm right. I'm just saying this is my perspective. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And what happened to the Democrats is when, to the left of, most of us were at that period to the left of the Democrats. They called it the New Left. And when the New Left collapsed, the Democratic Party ran out of a source of ideas. And then Reagan was a reaction to that. Poor Jimmy Carter. But Reagan put him down, and then we had the Reagan Revolution, and everything went back to the right. All these wonderful social programs were canceled, but that's the way the country was moving. How do you explain Donald Trump's popularity? He's a populist, and so was Joe McCarthy when he led the Red Scare. They used fear to gain power, and that's what Trump has done. And I think that's the only explanation. for his popularity, his populism. The dangers of populism, Carla.
Wasn't Robert F. Kennedy?
Oh God.
He was populist though, wasn't
Oh
he?
God, yes. He would have been a wonderful president, Carla. And such a dear, dear man. I don't know if you know that, you've probably seen the footage, but he went on TV in Indianapolis, Indiana. I guess it was after a rally, and he was having a rally, and they told him what happened to Martin Luther King, and he told the crowd Martin Luther King has been shot and he's died. And you know, I'm sure Mr. King would not want us to riot and to burn, and let's just follow his example of nonviolence.
What we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another, feeling of justice toward those who still suffer.
Almost 200 cities in the United States went up in flames, except for Indianapolis, Indiana, because he reached the people. He was such a beautiful man. And the thing about the Kennedys is that what the civil rights leaders liked about the Kennedys is that they learned, they changed, they were willing to listen and change, and they became a part of the vanguard. And all of us who didn't understand civil rights, we did through the Kennedys, and we followed them. And my favorite was when Jack and Jackie were in the White House, Carla. It was so exciting to be alive. You know, the early 60s. Everything was changing then, and he represented that, you know, passing the torch to a new generation, and we were all so ready for that. You know, I've lived to see the first Catholic president, JFK. That was a big deal back then, Carla. Everyone was afraid that JFK would take his orders from the Pope. But of course, that was ridiculous. It seemed like it all died, you know, with the end of the 60s. But it'll come back. And I felt a little bit of that spirit, you know, with Kamala Harris. I get carried away because I'm just a naive romantic myself, but I hadn't felt that way since JFK and Bobby. You know, hope. I know she's an idiot, and she doesn't have anything that the Kennedys had back then. But maybe her vice president does, because he's a character. I love him. And then lived to see the first African American president. God, was he wonderful. 2 terms. You know, wasn't a fluke. He elected 2 terms. And so, and I'm feeling that same sense of hope from Kamala. And I know it's totally misplaced, but perhaps, you know, she'll inspire people, or she'll be inspired enough to bring in what JFK did, you know, the best and the brightest, and that we can look forward with excitement and confidence and hope.
Does it feel like because she will be our first woman president, that's kind of the romantic feeling? Yeah.
Yes, it is. And it's always the Democratic Party that has these firsts. And I wish we had the old Republican Party back, you know, because they kept us they kept us in line. The people like me who just are just so Pollyannic about the future. You know, the old Republican Party they were like the governor on an engine. They keep you on the tracks. They keep you going the proper speed. But now they're just gone. And I don't want to use the F word, fascist.
Here I am, I'm getting ready practically to fire this guy, and you keep interrupting me. You know what, Summer, you're fired.
I loved The Apprentice. Trump has a charisma too, and he's funny as hell. He's great entertainment, and I think that's a big part of the appeal is, of course, I can think of plenty of American leaders who had great charisma, like old Ronnie Reagan doesn't matter, what you thought about his politics. If you hated everything he did and stood for, you couldn't hate Ronnie. I don't know.
As
Never
you
thought I'd see
said,
people attacking.
as you said, he is like he's a great entertainer, as you said when he was on The Apprentice. And it's true. So I think like he brings a little bit too much of that into this really serious space, which is, running for president, that his I think of him almost as like a stand-up comic. He's very good. He's very funny. He's very good like that.
Yes.
And
Oh, he's incredible entertainment. If only we wasn't in. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. So sometimes I think that some of the rhetoric is not really to be taken so seriously, because some of the things that he's actually done doesn't line up with such the bombastic kind of rhetoric that's come out of his mouth. For example,
well, that's true.
Yeah, like he used to say, lock up Hillary, right? Lock her up or something. Well, once, he never did anything like that.
Yeah.
He didn't even try.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, I think he is such an entertainer to his bones. He just kind of says things, but I don't think he's quite as harmful as maybe the media makes him out to be. And then, it trickles down to everybody, thinking he's going to be the next Hitler. I don't quite feel that way about him.
I think he is dangerous, and January 6th proved it. A lot of it is just it's his personality, and he likes to get people wound up, and he's always been Don the Con. I think you're right. He's not as dangerous as some people might fear that he would be. But he's brought out the worst in people.
I feel like he was maybe more so like that, but I do see something a little bit different now, and I'll tell you why. Just because, the independent candidate, Bobby Kennedy Jr., Trump has gotten Tulsi Gabbard and Bobby Kennedy Jr. to be part of his transition team, which means, helping to appoint the people that will be governing should he become president. Now, what I think is good about that is that I know for Bobby Kennedy Jr., and one of the reasons that I really love him as a candidate is that he's been fighting big corporations that have
Yes.
been, all of his career, which is really stems back to the 1980s. And he's been very successful with it. So he's sued these big corporations, he's won lawsuits, and he's been doing it consistently. And so I feel like that's a really positive thing. And the fact that Trump, during this go around, that he is embracing Kennedy and wants him to be part of the health sector of the government, I think that's positive.
I brought hundreds of cases against companies like Mobil and Exxon and Chevron and Texaco to restore the Hudson River. Today, the Hudson River is an international model for ecosystem protection. I sued DuPont, Mitsubishi, and Ford to force them to clean up chemical spills. I sued Monsanto on behalf of farm workers and home gardeners and families who develop cancer from using their pesticides.
That's one little saving grace.
That's true. And I love the Kennedys. They've done so many wonderful things and continue to do so. And although I personally think that Bobby Kennedy Jr. is just a little confused, I still love him and respect him because he's part of that great legacy.
I don't know. It's like it's almost upside down world. It seems things have just like, you don't know what to believe. You don't know what's right, what's wrong, what's true, what's fact, what's fiction.
Yeah, it's
Oh, you know what? We have a lag. And I think I have an internet. Yeah, my internet's lagging. Darn it. Yeah. Am I breaking up at all for you?
How's that?
Let's see. Technical difficulties and delays. Mercury retrograde, I tell ya. What in the world is the goings on? All right, let's try this again. Oh, yay. Oh, I thought I lost you.
Yeah, me too. I'm sorry it took me so long to figure it out.
Oh, that's totally okay. You know, Mercury retrograde. That's a thing.
Is that what we're in?
Yeah.
Oh, one quick story.
Yeah.
During the 60s, there was one radio station in Boston where we got all our information about where the next march was. And they had an astrologer. And he was always talking about Mercury in retrograde. And legally, he was called the Cosmic Muffin. And everybody listened to him. And he had, by law, to end each of his broadcasts, which were about 60 seconds long, with this caution. It's a wise man who rules the stars. It's a fool who's ruled by them. Over and out. So, the Cosmic Muffin. Yes, I'm an Aquarius, by the way. I used to be a Pisces, but I changed.
What is Gloria?
Oh God, she's an Aries.
Oh,
I've been ruled, but my dad was an Aries. I've been ruled by Aries my whole life. They're trouble.
Actually, Aquarius and Aries is a very good match.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very popular match.
Really?
Yeah. When those two get together, that's good. It's
Well,
good
I just follow the orders from the Aries.
Well, we all do. We all do. Aries is the leader. That's right.
Hi, sweetheart.
Send her kisses from me.
She says she loves you very much. One of her favorite people, call it.
I feel the same, Gloria.
She feels the same, baby. Oh, you're very nice to have me back again. I really just wanted to finish this one last thought. And all I've talked about is New York, and I hope you don't mind that. But
no, I love it. Yeah, go on.
Well, it's your city. There's a difference in New York between the people who were born here, like yourself, whom I call the real New Yorkers, and people like me who came from someplace else. The real New Yorkers are chilled. They're above it all, and they have more time. People who come from outside, they want to make a point. They want to conquer, and they want to step on anybody. And
you grow up fast when you're growing up in a tough place like New York. But, you know, I grew up on the Upper East Side, which sounds like it's not so tough. However, it was the 1980s when I was a child, and it was rough, even on the Upper East Side, which I'm talking 72nd Street. You know, we went to Central Park all the time, but Central Park wasn't even the same. It was also dangerous. You could not go in there after sunset. It was quite dangerous. Jeez. And quite empty. You know, there weren't a lot of tourists then yet. Although it was wonderful because, you know, there were museums and parks and just so much culture, so much life, so much art. And even the graffiti everywhere was, you know, it's art. It was graffiti on the subways at that time. And just those crazy drivers, and everybody was wild and free.
I'm very jealous that you had that experience to grow up. Wasn't there when you
let's see. Well,
when you were growing up in the 80s.
There was Dinkins, and who was, and Ed Koch. And Dinkins.
Ed Koch.
Yep.
The real New Yorkers.
Yeah, seriously.
A lot of people say they liked Ed Koch and Dinkins.
Dinkins, I think he sort of had a reputation
So,
of
I'd
just
like to.
not doing much. Hey.
There we are.
It's simply a Mercury retrograde, darling.